Rather than lecturing on what is considered to be a good programming style, I would like to start with a bad programming example and then work on it to make it better. Here is an interesting physics problem. Can you guess which of these angles of throw will result in the maximum distance range for the ball given the same initial velocity? If you thought 45 degrees or pi by 4 radians, you are correct. Now let's get back to the code. First of all, the code should have had documentation as well as comments as pseudocode. Because they're missing, we're just going to spend some time and try to update all of them. A small description about what this program is about. It's a program to compute the distance ranges of a ball that is thrown at different angles with an initial velocity. Alright, I haven't formally introduced you to the import statements in Python. So import statements are written to access libraries. For instance, here we're accessing the sine function from the math library in Python. Okay, so just update the comments which explain the code that is out there. So once we are done, we end up with this looking a little better. Let's move on to the next step. When you look at the code, you can see that we're repeating the values of pi as well as gravity. So instead of writing them as numbers, we would want to have them assigned to a variable. Okay, so and then use the variable wherever they're used. Looking good, but we can make this even better. The next improvement you can make is to rename the variables into something meaningful, like R2 as range 2 and R3 as range 3, G as gravity, and U as velocity. It's going to change like the overall look of your program, and it's much more intuitive than what it was earlier. One final improvement for this code, we're going to use named constants in them. A named constant represents a value that cannot be changed during the program's execution. So instead of assigning universal constants like gravity and pi to variables, we might want to assign them to constants. And the way we do it is by writing all the letters in caps. That tells Python that this is a constant. And yeah, so you can go ahead and then change wherever you have used variables for pi and gravity, you can convert them to the constants that you initialized at the beginning of your code. Alright, so this particular code is still incomplete. You still have to work on displaying the ranges. But yeah, so it served its purpose. I'm going to quickly review the good programming style principles. Always start with documentation and then write pseudocode as comments and then start to write your code. While writing the code, avoid these magic numbers, right? So nobody knows what they are. It's better that you assign them to a certain variable so that you don't make any mistake when you're repeating the same number over and over again. Alright, while naming the variables in your program, make sure they have some meaningful name that conveys what that variable is about. Finally, make sure that you initialize the constants at the beginning of your code and use them throughout the program. I'm going to wrap up this lecture by talking about variable naming rules. You cannot use Python's keywords as variable names. Here is the list of Python keywords. Make sure you don't use them as variable names in your programs. A variable name cannot contain spaces. Okay, so the substitute for a space is an underscore. So that's why you would see plenty of underscores in standard code that is written in Python. The first character must be one of the letters A through Z, or capital A through capital Z, or an underscore. Yeah, a variable name can start with an underscore in Python. After that, you can have, the standard alphabet, lowercase or uppercase. You can have multiple underscores or even numbers. Uppercase and lowercase characters are distinct. Okay, so this variable is not the same as that variable. Hopefully, this gives you the guidance that is required to write good programs. Take care.